I'm just going to assume that you're a legend and that you've watched part 1, so you know where we're up to. We've done all the CSS, we've done all the HTML. We're making a vanilla.js to-do app, and we're about to hit up that vanilla.js. There's a link down below to the project for a starter setup and the finished article in case you want to look at that. So you'll see, I already added an index.js file with an import of the CSS, SCSS last time. So what we're going to do, we're going to grab our submit form element, which we're going to call LE. We're using bracket destructuring for the, because it's a HTML collection and we want the first one. So we've done that. We've got an init function. We're not going to just put this straight in the file. We're going to put everything that's going to happen from the off in the init function, and then we're going to call init in the file itself. So submit form LE, it's got a click handler, and that's called handle form submit. We haven't declared that yet, so here we go. Let's declare that. That's going to take E, which is event, and it's going to prevent default. You need this because if when you submit a form, it automatically refreshes the page, so we're going to stop that. We need the new value, so we're going to just go to our input and we're going to get it. So the first thing we need to do, obviously, in that chain is get the element. So we just got one input. It'd be more complicated if there was more than one, but in this scenario it's pretty easy just to get the inputs value. So we don't just want to take it if it's empty. Obviously we don't want to fill our lists up with nothing. So we're going to look for a length greater than 0. If it's less than or equal to 0, the function is going to return right there, nothing's going to happen. So that's going to keep things pretty spicy. And we're also going to need to generate our new HTML. This isn't React or anything, so we're in vanilla.js, we need to do it manual. So we've got our new function, generate new to do. It takes our scraped input value and it's going to do some spice with it. It's going to chuck a bit of paprika around. We've got a list element which we're going to create with document.createElement. That is a JavaScript method, and we're going to set the class using set attribute to item, to do item even. Now that we've done that, I'm just going to do the easy route and do a little copy and paste job, because otherwise we'd have to create each step with the document.createElement and then append. So I mean, you can do it either way. You could do it like that, or you could just do it as a string like this. So each way has its advantages and disadvantages, but in this case it doesn't matter too much, so we're just going to do that. The reason why I do the top level item, which you'll see in a sec, you can see we're logging out the to do element there. The reason why I did the top one as a create element is so I can use the append function instead of having to do plus equals on the body. You'll see that later on. Just clearing out a few of these gaps right now. Make that a bit neater. We need to get hold of our list, right? We've got our new to do. We've proven that. We logged it in the console. We don't have anywhere to put it. So we're going to get that list, to do list LE, and we're appending a child. This is what I was muddling my words with earlier. So we created the element so we could use append child. You can't do that with a string. It needs to be an element. So now we type that, click add, and it adds it. And you'll see as well we cleared the input value on that line 21. To do form LE, let's get this. Same drill, destructuring the HTML collection. There's only one form, so don't have to worry too much. what we want to catch here is the submit. We're handling form submit. Still nothing happening with the checkbox and the cross. Keep your eye out for that. Let's try adding a few. Well, we'll just add one. Still, as demonstrated, all we can do really is add right now. We're in a good state of affairs there, I'd say. We need to start hooking up our other functionality. So we're not destructuring this one. We're just going to grab all the remove LE lists buttons, because the function we're going to make to do this we're going to reuse. It has to handle it has to handle a list rather than one element. And same for the checkbox, which has got our little tick in. So we've got them. In this, when the function initially fires a init, there's only going to be one, because it's the one we've put there as a test, so we're just going to get the first one. And we're going to handle that cross-click. Oh yes. What's the cross-click going to do? Well, it needs to know what list item it's on. That's the problem. It's a nested element, so what we're going to do is use a while loop to walk the DOM. This is terminology you don't use when you're working as on React, but we're going to walk the DOM and we're going to look for the nearest list item, which will be a parent element. You may or may not have used this technique before. I've seen it loads of times in other places. And once we've got hold of that parent element, we know which item to remove, don't we? So we put that in and we can remove it. Gotta be careful with the while loop. And it's a similar story with our check button. We're going to create handle check click, and we're going to have to walk the DOM again. We could create a shared function for this. In fact, that would be better practice, but for right now, let's just do a copy and paste job. If it contains checked, we've got two options here, so this function is a bit different. If it is checked, we want to uncheck it, and if it's unchecked, we want to check. So that first one removes the check if it is checked, and then it returns, so it stops the function executing until there. And then the second option goes to the end and adds it in. Looking good. Right, when we generate our new to-dos, we're going to need a way to know which buttons have already been activated, if you know what I mean. So we don't know from the DOM whether or not they've got the event listener. So an easy way I can think to do that is just add an inactive state to the remove and the check button. And then after we've added to the DOM, we can run a loop to look for inactive buttons and activate them. So we'll make a function called activate buttons, and we're going to pass in these classes because I think we can probably reuse the function for both. So we're passing in the class name, and then we're passing in the callback that we want to add to the buttons in question. So watch this. This is an exercise in reusing code. You don't need to write two different functions to achieve this. So we've got our target class and our callback, and we're going to first look for our inactive buttons, and that's going to look using the target class. We're going to loop all of our inactive buttons. Always use plus equals one instead of plus plus. It's more what do you call it? What's the word for that? More explicit. There you go. So inactive buttons, we're going through all of them. We're adding the event listener, the click and the callback. And we're going to remove that class which identifies it as inactive. We're just going to move that to a more appropriate location. Look at that. Going to add another one. This is where we see if it works. Don't forget to follow Kaylee Code on YouTube. Always has to be said. And so that's kind of it, to be honest with you. I think it's working. Like, we've got the cross button, we've got the check button, we can add via click. So that's kind of it. That's the to-do list. I think the style's looking quite reasonable. The functionality's, you know, it's all there. The only thing we can't do, and that's what I was thinking I'll leave to you guys to figure out, make these to-dos persist between page loads.